Chapter 9 is another heyday. It's another low day. It's another failure. It's another learning lesson. Joshua chapter 9 verse 1 says, as soon as the kings who were beyond the Jordan in the hill country and in the lowland all along the coast of the Great Sea toward Lebanon, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites heard of this. Heard of what? Chapter 8, they heard of the defeat of Ai. As soon as all the kings of all these places heard that Ai just got pummeled, verse 2, they gathered together as one to fight against Joshua and Israel. So news of Jericho and Ai spread quickly through Canaan, as you can imagine that it would. These are cities that went down. Israel just got into the country, and the first two places they touch are now burned to the ground, and Canaan is on full alert. The victories of those places caught the attention of the enemy. And so they start to glob together. These kings that wouldn't usually work together now are globbing together. These regions of people as a one army, as cohorts against Joshua, because the enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? That's what's going on. Look at verse 3. But, when the inhabitants of Gibeon heard what Joshua had done to Jericho and to Ai, they on their part acted with cunning. Key word, this was in your homework. And went and made ready provisions and took worn out sacks for their donkeys and wineskins, worn out and torn and mended, with worn out patched sandals on their feet and worn out clothes. And all their provisions were dry and crumbly. All their bread had gone bad. Now, in your homework, there is a map of where Gibeon is compared to Jericho, Ai, and Gilgal. And you would notice on the map that Gibeon to Ai is only 7 miles away. From Gibeon to the base camp of Gilgal, you're talking 18 miles. Gibeon is a next door neighbor. That is super important to know, okay? They are putting on this ruse. They're acting with cunning that they are from a country far, far away, when in fact, they are right around the corner. That's very, very important. Now, the definition of cunning that was in your homework meant what? Shrewdness, craftiness, prudence. Now, verse 4 in the King James Version is really interesting. I'm going to read it to you and give you one of the Hebrew words. It says that they did work wilily and went and made as if they had been ambassadors. The word wily in this verse, they did work wilily, is H6195. It's a different verse. It's an added word to cunning. So in the original King James Version, cunning and wily are both in there, and they're also in the original Hebrew language. Wily. As ambassadors. What's an ambassador? What does an ambassador do? Yes, an ambassador is somebody who represents themselves on behalf of a foreign country, a different country. It's somebody that belonged to Australia, but they are here in the United States as an ambassador for Australia. Their hometown, their passport is in Australia, but they're here as a diplomat, as an ambassador. And that's what the original Hebrew calls Gibeon, is that they are ambassadors on behalf of Gibeon. Now, look at verse 6. All this is going to come together. Look at verse 6. It says that they went to Joshua at the camp at Gilgal, which is base camp, right? And said to him and to the men of Israel, we have come from a distant country, so now make a covenant with us. Okay, that's what they asked. Now, couple pop questions. Where did Gibeon meet Joshua at? What city? Gilgal. Okay, and how far was Gibeon to Gilgal again? 18 miles. Okay, how far then did Gibeon travel? 18 miles. Yes, 18 miles. That's it. Now, look at verse 7. It says in verse 7, but the men of Israel said to the Hivites, perhaps you live among us. Something smells fishy. Perhaps you live among us. Then how can we make a covenant with you? Pause. Gibeon came to Gilgal. They're putting on this act with their worn out clothes and their worn out sandals and their crumbly, moldy bread. And they come to Joshua and say, hey, we live in a country way out there, so make a covenant with us. Okay, that's what they're asking for. And Israel immediately is suspicious. They're like, there's something off about these guys. Joshua's discerning antenna is up. The spirit is throwing flares. There's something wrong. He is suspicious. What is going on here? Okay, this is super important. Turn to Deuteronomy chapter 20, and it's going to fill in the blanks of what's going on with this idea of making a covenant. Because back in the law with Moses, this is addressed on how to handle other nations and other kings and other peoples when Israel gets to the promised land. So check it out. Chapter 20, verse 10, it says, when you draw near to a city to fight against it, offer terms of peace to it. And if it responds to you peaceably and it opens to you, then all the people who are found in it shall do forced labor for you and shall serve you. But if it makes no peace with you, but makes war against you, then you shall besiege it. And when the Lord your God gives it into your hand, you shall put all its males to the sword. But the women and the little ones, the livestock and everything else in this city, all its spoil you shall take as plunder for yourselves, and you shall enjoy the spoil of your enemies, which the Lord your God has given you. Thus you shall do to all the cities that are what? Very far from you, which are not cities of nations here. Okay. This is important because we need to vet out a few things to know what we're talking about. Question, who do these set of rules apply to? The answer is this set of rules applies to countries that are far off. That is outside of the bounds of the promised land. So here's the promised land boundaries. Any cities or people groups that are outside of the boundaries of Canaan, these rules apply. What are the rules? The rules are that if that city comes to you in peace, wants to make a peace treaty, you absolutely can do that. You can make peace with the cities that are outside of the promised land. If they make war with you, then war is on and you spoil them just like any other city. Okay, but look at verse 16. But in the cities of these people that the Lord your God is giving you for an inheritance, you shall save alive nothing that breathes, but you shall do what? Devote them to complete destruction. The Hittites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, as the Lord your God has commanded, that they may not teach you to do according to all your abominable practices that they have done for their gods. And so you sin against the Lord your God. Okay, this is a different set of rules. Who does this set of rules apply to? This set of rules applies to the nations and cities inside the promised land. You'll notice that the list of people groups that Moses lists here is exactly the same list from verse 1 and 2. Okay, so kings and nations and cities inside the promised land, they are not under the set of rules on the outside. If they're in the promised land, they are devoted to destruction. Everybody in Canaan was to be toast, okay? Done, dead, absolutely no covenant. There's no room for peace treaty inside of Canaan. So, the previous commands regarding warfare in verse 10 through 15 do not apply in the conquest of Canaan. Peace treaties were a no-go. The Lord said everybody in Canaan must go. So in Canaan, the promised land, not only was Israel not to offer peace to the cities, but they were also to destroy everything. Not only the adult males, but everybody. This was a unique set of war rules just for Canaan, okay? It was more of a war of conquest or defense, okay? So this is different, and you're in Canaan right now. Next week, we're going to explain why Canaan. Why is there such a brutal set of rules for the Canaanites? And next week, we're going to talk about that. But just know that that was the Lord's plan. Okay, go back to Joshua. Check it out. Gibeon asked for a treaty. They asked for Joshua to make a covenant, and Joshua is suspicious and he's asking questions. Look at verse 8. It says that they said to Joshua, "We are your servants." And Joshua said to them, "But who are you? And where do you come from?" Here's their answer. They said to him, "From a very distant country. Your servants have come because of the name of the Lord your God, for we have heard a report of him and all that he did in Egypt and all that he did to the two kings of the Amorites who were beyond the Jordan, Sihon, the king of Heshbon, and Og, the king of Bashan, who lived in Ashtaroth. So our elders and all the inhabitants of our country said to us, 'Take provisions in your hand for the journey and go to meet them and say to them, we are your servants. Come now, make a covenant with us. Here is our bread. Look at it. It was still warm when we took it from our houses as our food for the journey on the day we set out to come to you. And now look, it's dry and crumbly,' they said." Verse 13. "These wineskins were new when we filled them, and behold, they have burst. And these garments and these sandals of ours are worn out from our very long journey." Notice, this is super important, that the Gibeonites leave out some very important battles. They mention Egypt. They mention Sihon and Og, all of things that happened under Moses' command before they crossed the Jordan. But they leave out Jericho and they leave out Ai. Why is that? They leave out events that if they really were from a far off country, it is possible that they have not heard of the destruction of Jericho and Ai yet. This is smart. You see, Ai just happened. So if they would have mentioned Ai, it would have tipped Joshua off like, "Hey, how did you know about that? You must be a neighbor." This is smart. This is cunning. It's wily coyote. That's what this is. So note, Gibeon knows the word. He knows about the Lord. They know about Egypt. They heard all the stories in the wilderness. They know about Sihon and Og. They know the word. This is really important. Okay, back in Deuteronomy, what was the rules in Deuteronomy for Canaan? The rule for Canaan was that all the inhabitants of Canaan were to be utterly destroyed. But if they were from a far off land, they could make a peace treaty. Gibeon says, Bingo, that's our in. You see, somehow Gibeon knows about the Mosaic law, and they're right. They know about this law and they're playing it to their favor. They're manipulating Joshua to put them under a peace treaty by pretending like they are from a far off country. So let's tell Joshua that we're from a land that's very far away, a land outside of the promised land, very, very, very far out there. And they will have to, by their law, make a covenant with us. It's the rule set by their God. If we come in peace, they have to make covenant with us. Gibeon knows the word. Okay, that's very important. Look at verse 14. So the men took some of their provisions, that is Israel. They're looking at their provisions, they're checking them out, but what? Did not ask counsel of the Lord. They look at the provisions, but they did not check in with the general, the commander-in-chief. And Joshua made peace with them and made a covenant with them and let them live. And the leaders of the congregation swore to them. Okay, a few things here. First, though Israel was suspicious and Joshua was suspicious and their discernment was up, they completely ignored it. They suppressed it. Everybody who was in on this, listening to the Gibeonites, as far as Israel was concerned, was suspicious. Everybody's radars were up, but they ignored it. They trusted in what they could see instead. They looked at their bread, they looked at their clothes, they looked at their sandals. They're listening to the words, and they settled on that. The spirit was overruled by the flesh. Faith was overruled by sight, what they could see. It was the unseen versus the seen. And sight won. Sight is not faith. This is a fail. They got duped. Okay, second thing, what are you doing? Here's the thing. They just are on the heels of AI, right? AI, where they were going on momentum and they were very excited and they're like, hey, it looks good. Let's just send in a few people. This is a cakewalk. Don't worry, and they're going in. They got splattered. They made their own assessment instead of checking in with the Lord, and they got whooped, right? They didn't stop to get the intel. Hey, Joshua, there's sin in the camp. They didn't do that. Don't ignore your spiritual intuition, Joshua. They all had it. The text tells us in several places that they're suspicious about what's going on, but they did not check in with the general. They did not check in with the commander-in-chief. Check in, Joshua. Your radar is going off. You got to listen to that. Okay, look at verse 16. At the end of 3 days, after they had made a covenant with them, they heard that they, being Gibeon, were their neighbors, and that they what? Lived among them. And the people of Israel set out and reached their cities on the 3rd day. Now their cities were Gibeon, Chephirah, Beeroth, and Kirjath-jearim. Stop. Oh man, this is not good. Gibeon is in their backyard. We know that because we have the map. Joshua finds out that they are really close, and Joshua goes out there to see, and they could walk there. I was looking up Gibeon, okay? Like ancient Gibeon, and there was a few details that blew my mind about Gibeon, because I always thought it was like a village, definitely something that was going to go down, and they knew it, so they came into Joshua. No, it's not. First of all, Gibeon is not a village, it's a city. And when I say city, I mean like city. Okay, we're going to talk about it. Gibeon presented themselves to Joshua as lowly and weak, right? And that's kind of the sense, that's literally the picture that comes to mind when you look at these people is, oh, poor Gibeonites. Check out chapter 10, verse 2. Skip over to the next chapter. There is a detail about Gibeon that's wild because it says that he greatly feared because Gibeon was a great city, like one of the royal cities, and because it was greater than Ai, and its men were warriors. What? Yes. Okay, let me tell you about Gibeon. Gibeon's footprint, the city of Gibeon, in population was the same as Jericho. Okay? And it had military strength. It was a fortified city like Jericho, but it had the extra natural defenses of being up on a city. It's at the elevation of 2,500 feet. Remember, Jericho was the oldest city and the lowest city that was inhabited. It was 600 feet below sea level. Gibeon is 3,000 feet higher than Jericho. So not only is it fortified, but it's up high, which gives them a huge advantage. Okay, it's naturally defensible. There's this infrastructure of strength. Archaeology has uncovered tons about Gibeon. There was this massive water system within Gibeon that rivaled like Babylon. Remember all the canals and stuff where they could outlast any army siege because they had so much water? Gibeon was the same. They had these massive water systems, which means that they could outlast any siege of any army because they had water, okay? They found 63 fancy wine cellars in Gibeon with a 19,000 gallon capacity for winemaking. It was organized economically and administratively. There's evidence of international trade. Like they would find these shops, and these shops had like Egyptian stuff in them, and places like from all over the place in these little gift shops. It was a self-sustained, battle-ready city that was politically, economically, militarily strong. It's on a trade route, okay? So it's like a bustling city, and it's worse than that because notice verse 17 of our text again. Verse 17 says, the people of Israel set out and reached their cities on the third day, right? Now their cities were, check it out, Gibeon, Chephirah, Beeroth, and Kirjath Jearim. Do you see that? Joshua thought he was making a treaty with one village, with one city, like Ai or Jericho or Bethel. No, he wasn't. This is part of the cunning of Gideon. The word here, and historians tell us that Gibeon was the lead city of a 4-city alliance. 4 cities that were, geographically close, they had made an alliance and basically merged into one. They had shared defenses and economic cooperation, political alignment, which strengthened Gibeon even more because it pulled in these 4 other cities. Several thousand people made up the combined total of this 4-city alliance. Gibeon was a regional stronghold, not a single foothold. Whoops. Joshua thought he made a deal with one city, but he woke up bound to an entire enemy network. Whoops. Okay, look at verse 18. But the people of Israel did not attack them after they found out that they had been duped, right? They were tricked, they were duped, all of that. They did not attack them because the leaders of the congregation had sworn to them by the Lord, the God of Israel, Then all the congregation murmured against the leaders. I bet. They go to Gibeon to check it out and find out, oh, what have we done? It's one of the most strongest strategic cities in Canaan. And it's not just one city, it's an alliance of 4 cities. And the leaders are mad. They're hopping mad. But they can't attack Gibeon because they are in covenant. They are in contract. It's a legal binding document. It's already done. Okay? Check it out. Keep going. So the leaders, verse 19, said to the congregation, "We have sworn to them by the Lord, the God of Israel, and now we may not touch them." Verse 20, "This we will do to them. We will let them live, lest wrath be upon us," because they have to, right? Because they're in covenant, "because of the oath that we swore to them." And the leaders said to them, "Let them live." They're telling the army, don't touch them. They're off limits. So they became cutters of wood and drawers of water for all the congregation, just as the leaders had said. They made them slaves. Gibeon was not grafted in like Rahab was. Gibeon was not grafted in as a family, as an heir. They were shackled in like servants because they duped Israel. It's different, you guys. It's wildly different. Look at verse 22. Joshua summoned them. This is Gibeon. He's standing face to face with Gibeon now. And he said to them, "Why did you deceive us, saying, 'We are from a very far country. We are very far from you when you dwell among us'? Now, therefore, you are cursed, and some of you shall never be anything but servants, cutters of wood and drawers of water for the house of my God." They answered Joshua. Now check this out. They're going to, they don't have to lie anymore. So they're going to get truthful. Check it out. "Because it was told to your servants," Gibeon answered, "for a certainty that the Lord your God had commanded his servant Moses to give you all the land and to destroy all the inhabitants of the land from before you. So we feared greatly for our lives because of you and did this thing. Now, behold, we are in your hand. Whatever seems good and right in your sight, do to us. Go ahead." So he did this to them and delivered them out of the hand of the people of Israel, and they did not kill them. Verse 27, "But Joshua made them that day cutters of wood and drawers of water for the congregation and for the altar of the Lord to this day in the place that he would choose." Gibeon said, "Because we knew we were toast. And we knew that you would follow the law. So we used the law against you." That's what happened. Deception, you guys. Like our enemy. If only Joshua would have checked in with Jesus, the commander of the army, he would have got this intel. "Joshua, there's a snake in the camp. There's a snake in the camp." Tonight, by way of application, let's see what we can note very carefully about our enemy's tactics. Okay? Next week, we're going to look at Gibeon in a different light. Remember that Paul told us that the Old Testament stories were left for us as an example. This chapter is an insight to our enemy's playbook. Next week, they're going to illustrate something a little bit different. But for tonight, that's the vein that we're taking. Okay? Enemy tactics. Pop quiz. What is the promised land? The Spirit-filled, abundant life we appropriate by faith, right? That's what it is. In the Spirit-filled life, you guys, our enemy is active. It's not heaven. It's war. And we are soldiers at that war. And because we are soldiers at war, we should know our enemy tactics. This is another teaching moment for Joshua and for Israel. Now note, Joshua has met 3 opponents, 3 enemies in the promised land, and we're going to break them down. So far, he's met Jericho, Ai, and Gibeon, right? Those are the 3 so far. For us, these 3 cities represent the totality of the enemy we have in the spirit-filled life. Everything files under one of these categories: Jericho, Ai, or Gibeon. Because what 3 opponents do we have? We have Jericho, which represents the world. We have Ai, which represents our flesh. And we have Gibeon, that represents our enemy. The world, our flesh, the enemy. Those are our 3 opponents. Everything that happens can file under one of those opponents in the spirit-filled life. These are the 3 battles that are highlighted for us in the book of Joshua. Every other battle is all lumped in together. These are the 3 wars out of all the warfare that Joshua fought for 7 years. 3 battles bubble up to the surface and are highlighted for us: Jericho, Ai, and Gibeon. And that's for good reason. In this spirit-filled life, these 3 opponents are the totality of our opponent. You can file all the other wars underneath these categories. Do not be ignorant. 2 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 11 says, do not be ignorant of Satan's devices, his schemes, his tactics, his playbook. Paul says, do not be ignorant, which means we can be ignorant. Paul says, nope, if you're soldiers at war, you better not be ignorant. You should know these things. This is not optional knowledge. This is knowledge that will save your spiritual life. It will make the conquest of the land successful. Awareness of these things is survival of these things. Spiritual ignorance is vulnerability. We do not want to be vulnerable and unaware. We want to have our radar on. We want to have our armor on. We want to have our discernment out. We want to be smart soldiers that are ready for war. Okay? So our enemy is studied, and he's calculated, and he's adaptable. He is tactical and a brilliant strategist. And Satan knows his enemy, us. He knows us very well, so we should know him very well. First up on the blackboard in our war room, Satan's true identity. Who is he? Revelation chapter 20, verse 2. I'm going to read this to you, and you guys fill in your blanks. Revelation chapter 20, verse 2. Listen to all the titles just in this one verse. He seized the dragon, the ancient serpent, who is the devil, that he is the accuser of our brethren. The accuser of our brethren. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 2 tells us that Satan is the prince of the air. He is the spirit at work in the sons of disobedience. Satan is the prince of the air and the spirit at work in the sons of disobedience. That's who he is. John chapter 12, verse 31 tells us that he is the ruler of the world. The ruler of the world. This is his domain. This is the truth of our enemy. These are some of the titles that the Bible gives us. Yet that is not often how he comes. He doesn't come that way. How does he come? Like the Gibeonites? It's true. Now that we know Satan's true identity, let's talk about his strategies. Our enemy cannot destroy us. Our enemy cannot overtake us in this spirit-filled life. We are sealed and we belong to the Lord. He cannot destroy us. His days are numbered. Okay? The enemy is playing games from a position of defeat, and he knows it. This is our advantage. Our advantage is Calvary and the resurrection of King Jesus. Okay, so he is playing this game, these war games, as a defeated foe, and he knows that. He's messing around with us, but he cannot destroy us. He cannot take our life. Since he cannot take our life, he does what he can to take us out, right? To kneecap us, to hamstring us, to get us off the battlefield. That's what he's after. He's after to disable soldiers, and he uses cunning, slimy enemy tactics to do it. Okay? He has more tactics than this. He has more titles than what we brought out. The Gibeonites presented to Joshua worn garments and crumbly provisions and this rehearsed story, right? They constructed visible evidence in the way that they dressed and the things that they presented in their demeanor, right? How weary they looked, to support the false claim that's coming out of their mouth. Instead of attacking like Jericho and Ai, they chose to blend in and negotiate a treaty. Ugh. Israel was deceived by that. And the root issue was that they did not ask counsel of the Lord. Verse 14, right? If they would have stopped and asked counsel of the Lord, this story would be 100% different. So tactic number 1 is a deceiving appearance. A deceiving appearance. The Gibeonites dressed the part. Old clothes, moldy bread, patched sandals to look like distant travelers. Satan specializes in this very tactic. He specializes in it. In Ezekiel chapter 28, verse 12 through 15, there is a prophecy of Satan. And I'm just going to summarize it for you because it is amazing the descriptions that Ezekiel gives us of Satan. And you can look it up. It's Ezekiel 28, 12 through 15. He describes Satan as the seal of perfection, that he was full of wisdom, that he was perfect in beauty, that he was clothed, his clothes were made of precious stones. He was an anointed cherub, an anointed angel who walked in the very presence of God. That's who Satan was. Until, the scripture says, iniquity was found in him. Until that pride where he was puffed up took him down, right? And God cast him out of heaven because Satan said, I want your throne. And the next time we see him, he shows up in the garden as a serpent, right? Genesis 3:1. Now the serpent was more crafty than any other beast. Same word, cunning, slimy, wily, right? That's where we see him. 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 14. Check this out. And no wonder, for even Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. So it is no surprise if his servants also disguise themselves as servants of righteousness, their end will correspond with their deeds. Satan doesn't come slimy and like a dragon, like Revelation says. He comes as an angel of light. He comes in disguise. That's not really who he is, as we know from his true identity, but he comes in disguise. How do we stand against it? The Lord has warned us that deception often appears righteous and reasonable, just like the Gibeonites. He therefore requires us to test every appearance against his revealed word. You put what you're hearing and seeing up against the scriptures and see if they match. Beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God. For many false prophets have gone out into the world. Isn't that exactly what Joshua should have done? His spirit was going off like a radar. That part was working. The discernment part, the suspicion part, but he didn't stop to test Gibeonites up against the Lord. He did not seek counsel from the Lord, you see. Galatians 1 verse 8. But even if we, Paul says, or an angel from heaven should preach to you a gospel contrary to the one we preach to you, let him be accursed. Even if an angel comes and preaches the gospel to you, don't buy it. Okay? If the gospel is tweaked or off what we're preaching to you, it's trash. It's deception. Your radar should be going off. We need active discernment at all times. It is an enemy tactic that we must be vigilant about. No passive acceptance of whatever comes our way, whatever is talking to us, whatever it looks like. You've got to get your sword out. Now, tactic number 2, distorting truth. Okay, this is kind of buddied up to the last one. But the Gibeonites spoke truth of the Lord's fame and mighty works. Everything they said was true, but they twisted the facts to support their lie. They knew what Deuteronomy said, so they twisted it to use it against Joshua. This is what they do. Specifically, somehow, the Gibeonites knew the Deuteronomy law. That's kind of mind-boggling to me. But they did. And brilliantly, they decided to use it for their own protection. So instead of adhering to the law, they used the law against Joshua. The enemy knows how to use the word against you for his own purposes. He knows the Bible very well. That's just the truth. Listen, Satan, he's been a murderer since the beginning. There is no truth in him at all. Okay? He speaks out of his own character. He is a liar and the father of lies. That's who he is. Think Eden again. Remember the first question that Satan posed to Eve was, did God actually say that? Are you sure? Did God actually say that? Because you're not going to die, sweetheart. See how cunning he is? It's a deadly mixture of truth and distortion, and it takes many down. So how do we stand against it? This distorted truth. When something sounds spiritually informed but contradicts a clear command, we must guard ourselves. Gibeons sounded correct. They sounded right. They even gave a testimony of the Lord's power and might out in the wilderness. They omitted things that would have given them away, like Jericho and Ai, but they had the first part right. And they knew the law. They knew the Deuteronomy law. Listen, if we tell them we're from a far off country, Joshua has to make a treaty with us. That is twisted, you guys. Colossians chapter 2, verse 8. Check this one out. See to it that no one takes you captive by philosophy and empty deceit. See to it that no one takes you captive by philosophy and empty deceit, according to human tradition, according to the elemental spirits of the world, and not according to Christ. Just because it sounds smart, sounds spiritual, does not mean that it is. Acts 17, my absolute favorite, because it reminds me of all of y'all, okay? Acts 17, verse 10 through 11 says that the brothers immediately sent Paul and Silas away by night to Berea. And when they arrived, they went into the Jewish synagogue. Berea, the island of Berea. Now these Jews were more noble than those in Thessalonica because they received the word with all eagerness, examining the scriptures daily to see if these things were so. Be a Berean. You have to. You must. We test everything against the full counsel of the word. You have to know the word better than your enemy. Okay, tactic number 3. Demanding urgency. The Gibeonites created a crisis that demanded an immediate decision. Hey, we're standing before you. We're from a far off country. We need to make this treaty right now. We need to know that this treaty is secured before we leave. And Israel is feeling the pressure and they're growing skeptical, but they still rushed ahead without seeking the Lord. Verse 14 told us that. So the men took some of their provisions, but did not ask counsel of the Lord, right? How do we stand against that? The Lord commands alertness and the full armor precisely because the enemy's schemes are intentional. You got to have your full armor on. Joshua 9 shows us the danger of acting without first seeking counsel of the Lord. How many times have I done that? So much. Proverbs 19 verse 2 says that desire without knowledge is not good. That's an understatement. Desire without knowledge is not good. If you want something, but you're not wise, danger zone, right? And whoever makes haste with his feet misses his way. Jeremiah 10 verse 23, he said, I know, Lord, that the way of man is not in himself, that it is not in man who walks to direct his steps. It is not in us. It is not our job. We are not good at it. We get ourselves in so much trouble. We go the wrong way. I know, Lord, that it is not our job to direct our steps. Please be our guide. You see, Psalm 25, 4 through 5 says, make me to know your ways, O Lord. Not my ways, your ways. Teach me your paths. Lead me in your truth and teach me. For you are the God of my salvation. For you I wait all day long. Lord, teach me your path, your trail, your road. I want to go your way. But if we're urgent and we're making decisions, we can take a path that takes us off the wrong direction. We must pause and pray before we proceed. Disguised coexistence. Ugh. The Gibeonites did not want open war with Israel. They wanted to live among Israel as legitimate allies. This is the enemy's long game strategy, and he's very patient about it. In Matthew chapter 13, there is a parable of the wheat and the tares. It's worth going, and the Lord gives you an answer key to that one. It tells us that the enemy sows tares among the wheat while the people are sleeping. So the farmer is out there and he sows his beautiful wheat all day. And then the enemy comes in at night, sneaks in, like the Grinch, and sows a bunch of weeds out there. Okay? The field in this parable belongs to the Son of Man. It belongs to the Lord. Yet the enemy plants this imitation growth in the middle of the weeds, right inside it. Right inside it. Everything's mixed up. So you have wildflowers and wheat and all this beautiful stuff, and then just weeds everywhere. It's all in the same plot of land. The tares look similar to wheat in the early stages. You cannot tell them apart. While it's coming up and it's a baby, it's in its youthness of plants, whatever the heck that means, you can't tell them apart. They look exactly the same. You see, the deception is not open opposition like Jericho and Ai, but proximity and resemblance. It's somebody who's snuggled up close to you and looks a lot like the church. Danger Bay! Okay? What is the Lord showing us? When the enemy seeks coexistence, rather than immediate conflict, just a full frontal attack, when he doesn't do that and he comes in with his cunning and he comes in friendly and he wants to coexist, okay? He is planting counterfeits inside what belongs to the Lord. It takes wisdom and discernment and time to tell the difference. That was the thing with the wheat and the tares. The Lord told the farmer, don't pull stuff up. You're going to pull up wheat on accident because they look so much alike and they're growing so close together. Let me separate that out. But the point is that the enemy came in and messed this field up, you see, because he wants to coexist. He wants to just mess with you all the time. You may think you are making a treaty with Gibeon. It's not that bad. It's just one treaty. I mean, we have the entire promised land. And who knows? Maybe they are from a far out country. I mean, we're not buying it, but I guess we will. Let's just give it a shot. Okay, it wasn't Gibeon. It was a 4-city alliance, but it didn't look like that. Right? It looked like these weak people coming with bad clothes and bad breath and bad sandals and really bad bread. Okay? That's what it looked like. In reality, it's connected and it's layered and it's deep. It's deeper than you ever think. Sin is deeper than you think. All the time. And sin brings friends. Gibeon had friends. You see, what looks small is often structurally deep, and you can get yourself in a lot of trouble real fast. Joshua found out just 3 days later that they messed up bad. Gibeon was a huge miss, you guys. A stronghold in Canaan. The simple-minded, they'll just believe anything. It's crumbly bread. It's worn out sandals. That's fine. We'll go with it. You see. But the prudent, the diligent, the discerning, the wise gives thoughts to his steps. It's a slow down and it's a check-in with the Lord. It's to run everything that you're seeing through the Lord, because our enemy is deceptive. And he's an angel of light. He can come in any form. He can come in spiritual. He can come in humble. He can come in needy. He can come in friendly. He can come in a lot of ways that is not a dragon and a full frontal attack. We have to be careful. So what do? James tells us, James chapter 1 verse 5, if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask. I need to slow down my steps and slow down my mouth and slow down my mind. The prudent does that. I need to do that. The Lord knew what he meant. He told Israel to make no covenant, no alliance with the enemy, to take the land and remove the inhabitants. That was the call. That has been the directive for the Canaanites, the promised land, way back from Genesis. He has not changed his mind. That is still the job. The job is to clear the land. That's the job. But what happened? Joshua made a covenant. Israel is now bound to this oath, even when something seems legitimate or harmless. You have to take that thing to the scripture. You hold it up against the word.